Well, I don't see the point in waiting any longer. So let's bring her out. The star attraction, the one you came to see. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Miss Judy Gold.
So you get the warm-up job. You meet Letterman for the first time.
Yeah, actually, I'd met him once before for like a minute
Where?
at the Comedy Store in L.A.
Right.
He was introduced to me, and he was very nice. So I get the job at Letterman, and I have a little like pre-meeting with him, and so I said, "Look,
So you walk in his office?
I was talking to Barbara Gaines and in her office, yes.
Right?
And they were talking to me and Maria Poli. No ding.
Oh, Maria, no.
Yeah, and Maria Pope. Maria Poli, I went to college with.
Yeah.
Maria Pope, and so I'm in there, and they're asking me what I would do as the warm up kind of stuff, and I figured
Who was the warm up before you?
Wally Collins.
Okay,
he did it. But then he got some TV thing
right.
or whatever. So anyway, then Dave walked in to Barbara's office, and it was like, oh, okay. And
did your heart say?
Yeah, it was like, oh my God. And then so he just asked me.
Did you have resting smiling face?
The whole time. And but it was kind of cool. And I told him one thing. I said, what's interesting is that Mitzi Shore at the Comedy Store, who was not only great to me, but great to my son, who's a comic. It's another whole thing. But she was very good to a lot of comics. So she told me, you remind me of Dave Letterman, and I want you to go on earlier in the night because I think you can get the crowd going the way I need them. So I told that to Dave. I said, Mitzi said it reminded me of you, and he goes, oh, I feel so sorry for you. It was self-deprecating. It was funny. And he said, all right. And so then I get a call. You have a 6-week trial period that lasted 17 years.
Wow. So you did the 6 weeks, and you're just doing warm-up. When did you get the job to start booking the comics?
In 2001, which is right after a year after Dave had the bypass surgery. So if he had passed away, 2 things wouldn't have happened. He wouldn't have had that incredible son of his, and I would have never booked that show because it would have been over. So he would talk about comics all the time, and I would say, it's a shame that you don't know Kenny Rogerson or some comic that is a comics comic who should be on the show. And we talked about it, and then all of a sudden I got a call from Barbara Gaines, and she said, Dave is interested in you for booking the show. So it's like,
who was booking the show at this point?
Well, Zoe Friedman was.
That's right.
Yeah, and who I loved, who got me on the show as a guest.
Silver and Bud's daughter of the Improv.
And then she got this amazing job at Comedy Central.
Right.
And
I love Zoe.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Still, she's just again choked up because she was always so good to me and so great. And so I said, okay. I was a little nervous because I knew my life was going to change. Right. But I figured here I am in a position to help comics. Right. So I wanted to get comics.
You probably had mixed feelings like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Now, because you know that
when I booked the Paper Moon, people would call me at 3 a.m. I'm really funny. And I go, I know. But I have 52 weeks and I can only use 150 comics, over 52 weeks, 52 headliners or whatever. And that's all I could do. And I know and I wish I could help you. And and I'd give people 3 and 4 chances. So with Letterman, what I decided to do was be the booker that I wanted. Right. When I got the Letterman show, when they turned down for it, I never knew why I didn't get it. Right. And when I got it, I didn't know why I got it. It just happened to be what happened. So I would set up auditions. And I wouldn't make people to come to New York or L.A. or something to tape. I would go to the Denver Comedy Works and work all week. Right. And at the Sunday, I'd put on 10 or 12 local comics, and I'd take notes on every one of them. And after the show, I would sit there and say, if you want to go over notes with me, I will. And I'm telling you, I was, never said like, I'm great and you have to follow these. This is what you would need to do the show. For this show. Right. You're really great now. And, maybe in a year, let's try this again or whatever. You're not ready. I only had average 15. I had about 6,000 people contact me from all over the world. Right. England, Ireland, Australia. And I could only put 18 one year or 15. Right. And I had to put 7 or 8 that were regulars, like the Caroline Rays and the Jake Hansons and the stuff like that on the show every year. So I could only put a few, and people were like, "You hate me," they wanted to hear. When I went over the notes, I thought that's what they wanted, because that's what I wanted. But they wanted to hear, "You've got the show." And if I had notes that were notes, a lot of people were like, "I don't know."
It's so hard because,
I thought I was helping.
You're thinking. You have to think in the sensibility of David Letterman and his taste. Right. like I know when I worked at Rosie, I had to think like her. What does she want on her show?
If you write
it's not the Eddie Brill show,
Yeah, if you wrote for the Bob Newhart show, you had to write jokes like Bob Newhart would do. Right.
Mm-hmm. So look, I never ever called you once because I know I'm not a Letterman act.
No, but what I did suggest once was panel because, as you know, you did Colbert and you crushed because you were sitting on panel.
Right.
That's how you do well. The same thing with Lisa Lampanelli and a bunch of people.
I can't do a 4-minute set. I can't stand there.
It's a different animal.
Right. And I just that's not me. I tell stories and I'm a personality, but then you have to take these comics. Mm-hmm. And it's every night for 2 weeks before they do the show.
Yeah, and I've been working on.
But I have to say, you're going to the clubs every night. Do your set. Take the word "and" out. Take the word "or." Out. It's literally every little detail. And I did that because I did Leno a couple of times. Mm-hmm. I did stand up, and it takes the joy. I never wanted to do those jokes again after because it's just like the joy is out of it. It's a formula at that point.
Yeah, and that's what Letterman was great about. It's like he didn't want a formula. He wanted comics to be themselves.
Right.
But they had to fit into the category. There are comics that are my favorite comics that they told me no. I suggested a ton of comics that got turned down,
right?
And it's because it's not the Eddie Brill show,
right?
The executive producers are amazing at the Letterman show. I mentioned Maria and there's Jude Brennan and Sheila Rogers maybe.
Wait.
Yeah, I have to look it up. Sheila, Sheila Rogers who booked the show.
Right.
And she's brilliant and she's working on Corden. I work with a bunch of really talented people. And so sometimes they would turn it down. They knew the show better than I.
Right.
I was there 17 years, but they were there 33
right,
35 years or whatever with Dave. So, it was a lot of team stuff, but I kind of knew what Dave liked, and we would, talk about it. And
who was the first Comic-Con after 9/11?
It was either Emo Phillips or Colin Quinn. Colin Quinn had a joke about 9/11. Right. That was not about 9/11, but it was really funny, and I had to get it approved by Dave, and he loved it, and we have to put it on the show.
So you're doing this job, you're doing stand-up. You start this in Nebraska. You started
10 years ago.
Is there a comic who's never been to Nebraska?
Yeah,
I think that's one of the only states I have never worked in.
I was only 6 for me. But Nebraska I had never been to except for 10 years ago. So what they want in Nebraska is, the whole idea was they wanted an amateur comedy festival. I said no. I said, this is about Johnny Carson. So it's about integrity of material, and it has to be the kind of comics who would have done stand-up on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. Edgy, material-driven comics.
Right.
No singing, no, this kind of stuff, although there's nothing wrong with any of that.
Right.
It's just what we did.
It's not me or Mario Canto.
Right.
Right.
And, and when you're in the Johnny Carson theater, they want there's no cursing.
Right.
There's none of that.
Right.
But then we do a late show, which is packed, where everyone could say whatever they want.
Oh, I could do that one. I could do the other show, too.
Right.
But yeah,
I'm sure you can.
Yeah.
And I talked to you the other day about it. I bring usually 20 comics, but here's the thing. I'm the comedy festival where we pay the comics money, we fly them in, we put them up in a really nice hotel, we feed them every day, and we treat them like gold, and like Judy, gold. And then and then also we give them a family that if they want. It's like an ambassador family.
Right.
Hey, I need a Band-Aid. And they go, we'll go pick it up for you. You need a ride to the theater.
Right.
So, it's just, we treat comics.
Right.
That's so nice. And comics come back and they go, oh my God, is that real? Was that real? I go, I'm the comic. I put this together. And I make sure that comics are treated like...
So, do I get an invite for next year?
Yes, because you couldn't get this year because it's our anniversary.
I know, and you're having everybody back.
Right. But you've always been one of my favorites, and if I could, I've booked you on things.
Right.
I've done that.
So,
but anyway,
you got yourself in a pickle.
I got myself in a pickle because there was a guy with an agenda.
So you must have mixed feelings about the media. I mean, like we're in a time right now where it's like media. But you were interviewed in the New York Times,
right?
And did he bring it up, or there's very few. I mean, but just to say for the background, there has always been very few female comics on Letterman.
Yeah, there have been.
From the very beginning, there was a handful. It was Carol Leifer, Margaret. Paula did
it a couple of times. Elaine Boozler, but she hadn't done it in a million years.
Right. I mean, but he rarely and. Look, it does.
Wendy Liebman,
right? Liebman, yes.
Suzanne Westenhofer, I put on the show. I mean, I was working with Carmen Lynch and Corey Kahaney at the time, getting their sets together.
Right.
There was.
But I'm saying but we in the 90s before you started, it was still known as there's hardly any.
If there were 20 comics, there'd be 18 men and 2 women. That's the way it was.
Right.
And it wasn't. I don't think it was because Letterman hated women. I don't.
Right.
Think that at all about him. He's always been really lovely. And in fact, recently said, how come they're not women late night talk show hosts? Because he was always very, we always had female comics on the show, but on the panel.
Right. I know. I never got to do. I would have been so.
Amy Poehler was one of our best guests ever on the panel. And
Judy Gold would have been a good panel.
That was something, that I talked about.
Yeah.
There's other comics. I don't want to mention people's names that I mentioned. That would, Artie Lang, I thought, well, he's not going to be able to do stand-up on Letterman. But on the panel, he was great. And but anyway, so what happens is things are going really well for me at that time.
Right.
I was in the best shape of my life. I did my 10th Letterman, and I didn't just pick myself and I get to go on.
Right.
I had to go through the same thing. I had to get my stuff approved and the network and the producers, and I had to have my set done. And I had a very good set. And then I was interviewed for CBS This Morning show, which is one of my favorites.
Right. I love that show.
That's great.
Isn't that one of the best shows on TV?
And to be on it was such a thrill.
Yeah.
So now I'm feeling pretty good.
That's another bucket list.
So there's a guy who worked at Letterman as a writer who now works for Samantha Bee, and he's a great writer. And he was working at Letterman. He said, this friend of mine who I know wants to interview for the New York Times. So I said, okay,
and it
have
was
him
that.
Come in.
Was it that Thursday thing they were doing for a while?
No.
They were doing a thing on Thursdays in the art section where they would interview someone, either a stand-up comic or someone, in the comedy industry.
And I was excited because I wanted Letterman to see how I was so proud of what we were doing at the show that I was going to be in the New York Times. Now, my number one mistake, and the reason why I have to take all the blame for it, is because I said okay to the New York Times without asking the show's permission.
Right.
And I did that selfishly because I was excited. I know Letterman read the New York Times. I know he talked about
Right, of course.
other
It's a
comics
feather in your cap.
Right. I was excited about it. And after the interview, I felt really great about it.
But did you think when you said yes that it was going to be mostly about Letterman, or it was mostly about you as a comic?
It was about me booking Letterman. The guy wanted to talk about that, and I said, sure.
The
I was very
procedure,
proud of what we were doing, and I was going to be able to help. The reason why at the end of shows I would talk to comics and give them critiques, and it was very helpful because I could let people know what we're looking for.
Right.
And then this article now is going to come out, and I explained to this guy what we're looking for. So he had asked me about female comics, and I had said...
What was his exact question?
I don't remember the exact
question. Was it
question.
Provocative or no?
It was kind of... It was a question about, female comics on the show. And I said, well, why aren't there more female comics? I said, there are less female comics out there, is one of the things I said. And here was what I was thinking. In the last 4 months, I had gotten about 175 links of comics. The last 10 women comics that had sent me stuff had been like the men that we turned down, misogynistic, not authentic, being not saying that no one's acting like a man or no one's acting. There's none of that. It was, I know these comedians and they're trying to do something that's inauthentic.
I've talked about this a lot on the show, that this new wave of feminism that in order these younger comics think feminism is doing exactly what the guys do, and being able to talk like the guys. No, Feminism is doing what we do and being true to ourselves, and that's enough, and that's equal, and that's just as funny and just as great.
And what I was trying to say, Paula Poundstone's my favorite comic of all time.
Right.
Joan Rivers and I, like you,
besides Judy,
beside you,
all right.
Joan Rivers was good to me. She helped me with my very first set on Letterman.
Right.
She was on a plane and made a lady move and sat next to me and went over my set and gave me notes on the plane for my first set.
She was unbelievable.
Lily Tomlin is my hero.
Right.
You know, all this stuff. So
I never saw you ever treat a female comic, and you're also the only one of the only ones who didn't sexually harass any of them.
Right.
It wasn't never like.
And I knew that. I'm like women and go out with them, but I never dated comics or waitresses because I knew that it was stupid, especially. In life, you don't shit where you eat, kind of thing.
Right.
Unless
you have the bathroom
then it's
in
right
the kitchen.
There. That's the name of your restaurant. I'm working at the bathroom. So look, I know who I am, and what I was doing was trying to answer this guy's question.
So if you could go back and say,
I would never do the interview.
What would you have done? You wouldn't have done the interview, but if you were in the interview,
right? And
he said, "Well, how come there's not a lot of people?" What would you say if you could go back there and re-say it?
I would say there are a lot of great female comics, and I look at them all the time. I'm looking at them now. I'm working with a couple that did. I had 2 female comics that were turned down by the show earlier in the year that were great. It's not about females. I don't book female comics. I book comics. Jen Kirkman is somebody who I've never met.
I love her.
Who's one of my favorite comics.
Yeah.
And I've booked her 7 or 8 times throughout life because she's so great, and we've never met.
That's great.
Right.
But I just met her. She was an Emerson person.
Right.
I put her on this alumni show. She crushed. I wasn't there, and then all of a sudden, I started booking her like crazy. So I would have gone and said, I was very honest. Now, there was a thing that was created that made me angrier. The things that I wasn't as angry about the women line because I knew what I meant.
Right.
And
so wait, just for our audience, they misquoted you.
They took the
and
quotes
you got in
out of
trouble
context.
for that.
Well, no, if they take a piece of the quote and not the rest of it,
they took it out of context.
Right. The guy had an agenda. You could see if you read the article now. He talks about how big my head is, and he just shits on me all the way through.
He didn't talk about resting, smiling face.
Never talked about that. He said that I was like the avuncular uncle with a big head. Like a huge head on the shoulders. It was just, Brian Regan and a lot of comedians called me up and said, "This guy." There's a couple of comedians in LA. Some guy called me and wanted dirt on you.
Right.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So
I don't want to mention
you.
these names because they will get reviewed by this guy eventually.
That's insane.
So he somebody said, "Look, I hung up." Somebody we know very well said, "I hung up on the guy." He says, "Can't you tell me a story?" He said, "No, Eddie Brill's been good to me the whole time."
Right.
So anyway, there was Amy Schumer had made a statement that that all of the comics on the Letterman show are mostly white, middle-aged, Midwestern guys. Mm-hmm. So I gave the author of the article the list of who was on that year, and there was only one person out of 20 comics that fit that, Jake Johansson, who actually lived in L.A. But everyone else was either African-American or Chinese or younger than...
Say Asian. You don't know if they're...
I knew he was Chinese because he lives in China. He was from China.
China.
And
He was from China?
He's back in China now.
China!
He's become a big star in China because of Letterman.
Really?
Yes. And so...
They should do that. I'm going to Israel. All right, go ahead.
So, and most of them were younger than Amy at the time who had done the show.
Right.
So her statement was something that she felt from watching the show. I can't blame her for feeling that way.
Right.
But the author had the list of comics.
Right.
He could have said, "Look, Amy, you were wrong. I have the list in front of me."
Right.
But it didn't serve his purpose to say that. He kept that quote in there anyway. And then Anthony Jeselnik, who I thought was hilarious, he, I went up to him one night because people would walk in a room, everyone would look at me like, "Are you booking me?"
Did you hate that?
I had to be okay with it. I understand. I'm a comic.
Right.
If Zoe Friedman walked in the room, I would look at her like, "Hey," when
Okay, go ahead. All right.
All right. So Anthony Jeselnik is quoted saying, "Eddie Brill, I don't believe Letterman lets him get away with it. He does these workshops around the country and is charging money on the auspices that you'll get Letterman if you do that," which was complete horseshit.
Right.
Because I've been teaching for 40 years.
Right.
And I've been doing this workshop before I was at Letterman. And when I was at Letterman, knowing not to shit where you eat is one of the things I knew. And also, I told every comic at the beginning of every workshop, this is not Letterman booking. If you want to leave, if you thought that's what it was, please leave. And one person left. In all the years.
Who was it?
It was an Australian comic who said, I thought this was a Letterman audition. And I said, no, it was in Vancouver a million years ago. But of all the times, and I always said that, and he said, they wrote that Eddie Brill has a conflict of interest because he's charging comedians. So all these people are just like lying and making up things. Anthony Jeselnik has never taken a class that I taught. First of all, I don't believe
you ever think, this is a conflict of interest? Like, maybe I shouldn't do this, or no? No,
because I've been teaching for years, and and I knew that you can't teach comedy, so it was a workshop. So I know, as the head of the workshop, I know what people are looking for on television. I know what the Letterman show's looking for. So how helpful is it to take a workshop with someone who actually has been booking comedy for 40 years, 33, and can help? And again, at the beginning, I said, this is not about booking Letterman. This is not about that. Most of the people I had, I'd done the workshop with people who had done Letterman and all this other stuff. Anyway, I was just angry that came out in the article. So it was a shame because there's a book that the author wrote about Letterman, and he repeats that whole thing, the article, and then says, and many of the people at the show also, there were rumors that he had a conflict of interest, but no one at the show, because if I had a conflict of interest, they would have came to me.
Right, they would have said, Eddie, you can't do this.
Letterman
and
knew I was teaching, but the show didn't. So, but it was this guy created the conflict of interest and then wrote it that people are talking about it, and he's the guy who brought it up.
Right.
So this guy actually really fucked up my life, and a lot of comics' lives, because there were a lot of comics I was working with, like Gerard Carmichael. I saw him in 2011, and I was booking him in 2012, and he ended up never doing the show. I was about to book him next.
Right.
Then Carmen, who eventually got the show.
So, all right. So I have 3 things that I have to discuss with you. So, what happened? When you read the article, what time do you read?
It was in the evening. I had gotten a copy of it, or an early copy. And
did anyone alert you or anything like that? Like, Eddie, you got to read this article. And when you read it,
the PR person Kim at the show said, "Here's a copy of the article." Didn't say anything about it.
There was no. All right. And
I was
then
at my friend Chris's house, and all of a sudden, every sentence, I had a lump in my throat.
Right.
I was ready to cry.
It's the worst feeling.
Because none
I
of
never
this stuff,
said that. I never said that. I know.
And that's out of context, and that's bullshit. And I'm always been kind to women, but treat comics like not women, but
as comics.
And it was just her. So now what had happened was, Letterman was just in the paper right before then about not having female writers. And just previous to that, it was the affair he had with Stephanie of the show. Mm-hmm. So there was some bad press, females. Right. So even Letterman admitted to me, he said, you got fucked. He said, it was all... it's like Libby Scooter with Cheney and Bush. These people do things, and I have to take the fall for it, which is a shame because it puts a scarlet letter on me that's undeserved. I've been loyal to these people for so many years, and have fought and fought for Dave when he was going through his crazy stuff, and this was my family. And they
did you feel like that? With Dave, that there weren't a lot of female writers. I mean. As a woman, it is harder for us, and we're never in the writers' room. And the ageism of female writers is worse than I know that. So
and here's the thing: Karen Rontowski. I don't know if you know Karen Rontowski. She's
I don't know.
Incredible comedian, and she was in her 40s.
She probably has Jew blood in her.
It has to be.
Okay,
Rontowski. From Pittsfield, Massachusetts.
Oh,
it's one of my favorite comics, and I knew she was up Letterman's alley because she had a joke that she says, I have these Santa Claus underwear, and whenever it's, I go to the bathroom, it's like Christmas in my pants. Or something very Letterman-esque joke, and he loved that joke and repeated it so I knew she was great. Now, the problem was she was in her 40s, and a lot of the ageism that's going on television, we're looking for 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds.
You're not a great comic at that age.
I was talking to Kathy Ladman, ding, ding, ding. 2 nights ago, and I said, I've never been a better comic than I have been in my whole life as I am now. And she said the same for me.
Same
I've never
for me.
been better. This is the time you need.
Oh, it's life and fearlessness, and you have nothing to lose. You don't give a shit.
Right, and that's why Letterman got better. David Steinberg, I was warming up the TV show for David Steinberg, and he said they wouldn't let him have Carlin on his show because he was too old. And
Unbelievable.
It's like, what?
It's ridiculous.
Every kid, so anyway, I had the one female comic that I got to book that year was great, hilarious. I fought for her, got her on TV despite the age thing that was going on, and she made her network television debut with 6 other comics making their network television debut. So yes, I understand about the female thing. The funniest people in my life are females. Right. My mom, my sister, my aunts, my cousins.
Well, no, I know, but
you grow up in an era.
You don't like you booked females, but
right?
You don't. I used to have a book. I have it.
That's cool.
And I'd call, hi, and I'd get, oh, we had a woman here last week.
The worst.
But it was constant, So when we see, and I always say to people, and I say there's less women comics to all comics, and the percentage of great woman comics to all female comics is the same percentage of great male comics to all male comics. It's just that there's less than
right.
So
and just to say, the last time, one of the times I booked her the Paper Moon when I found that sheet was you and Brett Butler. So it wasn't just one female on the show.
Oh yeah, that was the other thing. You put more than one woman on a show, which was very unusual. Lucian did it, and that was it.
Because it doesn't matter. But anyway, the ending of that thing is that so here I am. They keep me at the show as the warm up guy. Because they didn't want to fire me.
How did they approach you and say, look?
They said, they wanted me to explain myself. And I was in
Who did you have to explain to?
The whole executive producer staff.
So you went in a room.
I went in a room with all these people.
Was Dave there?
Dave wasn't in there.
Did you want to throw up?
I wanted to talk to Dave. I was crying. Couldn't believe that this happened to me because, I was being so good to comics.
And I remember you reached out to me. And a lot of people.
Yes.
And I was like, Eddie, you never did anything to me.
Liz Winstead called. I mean, I got about 40 calls from women saying, you're the greatest. We love you. Don't listen to what they have to say. And even the executive producers have written me notes that I have that say, we never thought you were misogynistic. Think about this.
Keep them.
I have it. But here's the thing. I was booking the comics for 11 years, and all of the executive producers, 3/4 of them were women. And like I said, Sheila Rogers was the booker of the show. Mm-hmm. If I was a misogynist, they wouldn't have let me stay there for 11 years as the booker.
Of course.
So it never was a case of me having misogyny. But then people started lashing out, like Elaine Boozler, who I have no idea why she was so mean and mean-spirited. And she lied to people in the press and the things. Elaine Boozler did the show.
Yeah.
And
I love her, though.
Yeah, she's a great comic. But she didn't want to work with me because she didn't know who I was, she said. So that's fine.
She's from a different,
Right, okay. So she does the show, and it doesn't go that well for her. And so she begs to come back a year later and through the agents and all that. And they give her another chance, and she says, I'll work with Eddie. So her and I work together, and the set is great, and she goes on, and she goes off script. And then anybody who's ever gone off script on our show, anyone, and there's been... in my era of 11 years, 5 people, you're out. You don't get to come back. And I didn't have anything to do with any of it. And all of a sudden, she's like, he doesn't book any female comics. The Letterman show doesn't have comics.
Right.
And she told a friend of mine, she didn't know he knew me, said, Eddie Brill, I called him for a spot, and he said he was saving it for himself. Well, first of all, I never spoke to her, ever, except that one time. And why would I say that? Whoa, what idiot would say, yeah, I'm saving it for myself. I hope you're taping this. Are you taping it? Yeah, I'm saving it for myself because I'm great. And I didn't do the show for 9 years because I felt so Jewish guilty.
Right.
Because I couldn't book everybody. I had lesser comics. So anyway, that's that thing.
Here's my
Sorry,
question.
Elaine, but I'm telling the truth. And I wish you didn't hate me and weren't mean to me because I always thought you were funny.
Okay. Maybe we'll do a little come to Jesus.
People tried to. I said I want to talk to her, but she doesn't want to.
So you read this. Who called you first to say come in the fucking?
One of the execs called me in.
All right. I did the Boston Women's Comedy Festival with you. We had this panel, and there were a lot of angry young female comics.
Right. That's why I came, because I wanted to be there to stand up for it.
So the one thing I got from that, and you know, there were some tense moments, was that when you gave them feedback, some of them took it as you saying, you're not funny. You're not ever going to make it.
I remember the panel well.
Right.
Now, here's what, let me just say, to answer that. Wendy Liebman was on the panel, who I booked at Letterman. You were on the panel, who we already talked about. There's another comic who I was working with at the time. Can't remember her name all of a sudden. I was working with her at the time, and we're good friends, and I can't remember her name. So was done the show. And this girl who was the host of the panel who said, you told me that I wasn't ready, and I didn't say she wasn't good. I was at the end of the show, and they were all. I remember the time, and she was acting like a comedian, like I did, like every comic did at the beginning of their career. And that was the advice I gave her in a loving way. I said, "Look, you know, you're very talented. You have great persona on stage, but you're acting like a comedian. You're in that phase." Well, obviously, I didn't ruin her life because she's there.
Right.
She's a great comic. She grew. But you have to tell people at the beginning something, and I wanted to tell the truth. Right. She took it like I hated her, but I always knew her and loved her and was nice to her afterwards.
Yeah, but that I know, and you were so, it was so good for you to go there and do that.
It was sweet of you to do that.
The one thing I did take away was that some of these people, you know, like that, you have to realize. I mean, I know that whatever you say to them will stay with them for the rest of like the way that woman fired me, you know, that rejection and that, you know, sort of, you know, she was putting down, like if she had said, you're funny, I'd be like, okay, I'll understand that in a future time. Right. But for her to say, to criticize my work, that what I was doing wasn't good when it in fact was good. It was too
terrific,
good.
Yeah. Right, but
that stayed with me. That was a personal rejection.
And you mentioned that during the day at the panel, and it made me think about it. Okay, and maybe it's, you know, none of this stuff goes over my head. I thought about it, and I thought, okay. And then I remembered that I had told a few comics, men and women, the same thing. You're at a point right now, like when I started, I was acting like George Carlin. Right. You know, comics, mostly, except for Chappelle, I think everybody's acting like their favorite comedians until they learn to be themselves. Right. That word authenticity again. Right. Which is what
But it's
I
also,
learned.
you don't know what you're doing.
Right.
Like, you got to feel, you can't do that when you're thinking in your head, oh my God, I'm on stage. Oh my God, there's people. Oh my God, you know. It's like,
I got to remember my lines.
Right. Oh my God, if there's stroke bombs and they're, you got to get out, you know, you get
so
to
I let her know to be conversational, to be, you know, conversational and not to be rote on stage. Right. But here I am on a night and there's 20 comics going on and they're all coming up to me asking questions. And what I needed to do in retrospect is to sit, you know, which I have done many times, but I didn't do to her maybe. Right. Is say, look, I respect everyone who does stand up, even people who suck. I respect them. Of course, yeah, you know, and because I know people who have sucked and then gotten really great a year later or 6 months later.
Or 5 years later.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Louis Black.
Yes.
He was horrible in the beginning.
Yeah. I have a ton of names I can give you of people who just sucked at the beginning.
And he'll say it. I was horrible.
Yeah. I was selling cereal. I wasn't really, you know, it's like I was doing advertising on stage. Right. And eventually look at Brian Kiley, for instance. Right. He was the best material in the world, but he's sweating an icebox. Right. He couldn't perform. Right. So when people need advice, they want the truth from someone, and all I was trying to do was give this woman at the time, Erin, the truth. Right. And the great thing is that she stuck it out. And hopefully she realizes years later, yes, I was acting like a comedian at the time. He was honest with me. Right. And here I am. I wanted it bad enough that I fought to be great at it. Because I think she's hilarious. Yeah.
And I said that on the panel because I remember all the fucking shit people told me. You're too Jewish. You're too... It's like... That's who I am. Yes. Like, you're telling me not to be who I am.
Well, I had the same thing as a comic. I had the same thing where I got, there's a writing war going on.
Yeah, it's like telling me how much time we have left. Fuck that shit.
But, you know, I understand it. You know, and look, like everyone, never going to admit being perfect at it. But my intention was to get behind the scenes and to let comics get the integrity and the respect that they deserve.
Right.
And that's one thing that I'm proud of, that I did at every job that I've ever had, including Letterman, and got people on that would never have gotten on, and also bummed out that there were people I wanted to get on. You know, my I don't want to mention names, but you know, but I fought for people where, you know, people yelled at me like, well, stop it.
Right.
You know, it's our, you know, it's not your show. And I go, I know, but this comic is amazing, and I want them to. There are comics that don't like me, and they have no idea how I fought behind the scenes for them.
It's
but that's,
you can't
part
take
of
it
the
personal.
job.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to know the most desperate thing a comic ever did to try to get on Letterman, to you. No names.
Right.
Just
there was one person who was middle of the road comic, you know, really middle of the road, and got laughs, but it was just, you know, tired premise. You know, you've heard the jokes a million times before.
Right.
Great
Not
performer.
Original. Yeah.
And I was at the audition at the old Gotham, and this person left the stage going, I've got the show. And afterwards, I knew it was going to be hard.
So it was, this person had a killer set.
Killer.
Right.
Crushed with the audience. But I knew that this was not Letterman style and this kind of stuff. So I told him that I knew that he was going to freak out. So I sat him down, and I said, look, I know you crushed tonight, but this is not the style of the show. And, you know, if you want to bring me other sets or whatever. And he wrote me the nastiest letter.
Of course.
The second nastiest letter I've ever gotten in my life. And it was long and nasty. And when it was over, I just took a breath and I wrote back. I said, I'm going to forget this letter. I understand your anger. And I love that you're passionate and that you're angry. And, you know, you're angry at yourself and you're angry at the system. And I know you're not angry with me because we've known each other for years and all this stuff. You know, if you want to do Letterman show. So he changed his whole act. He went and he started dressing in sport jackets.
Oh my God!
And he changed the style that he was, and he wasn't as funny and as powerful
he was
as his authentic self.
Right.
So you're not right for Letterman. So
go
Conan.
do another show.
Make your own HBO special. You know, not everyone was right for Letterman. I wasn't right for
Letterman. I wasn't right for Letterman. What? Anything else?
No, you know, it wasn't, because people knew me and they knew that there was nothing I was going to do. I mean, no one ever flirted with me to try to get the show, men or women. You know, it was, they knew that it didn't matter. It didn't matter. I wasn't going to give. They were my best friends I couldn't put on the show, and they knew that. If he's not going to put this person on,
now,
he's not bullshitting.
Welcome to Play It, a new podcast network featuring radio and TV personalities talking business, sports, tech, entertainment, and more. Play it at play.it.
You have a son.
Yeah.
Who's a comic.
Yes.
When did you find out you had a son?
When he was 12. I found out just before he was 12, and I met him the day you were there. The day I met him.
No way.
There was a show at Bryant Park, and I talked to the mom, who I love for the way she raised him.
Why didn't she tell you that you had a child?
She didn't know at first it was mine. I'm going to tell you the story, and don't judge it right away, because it's easy to judge at the beginning until I tell you the sort of punchline of it.
Okay.
My sister lived 2 buildings over. My brother-in-law I went to college with, we were very close. They had my nephew. He was just born. One of my sister's friends was over the house and a little too drunk to drive, and she lived 2 hours north of Manhattan.
Right.
So my brother-in-law called me up and said, look, I know you're running the comedy club and you have a futon that you put all the comics on. Can you put this person on your futon?
Okay.
So we carry her to my apartment. She passes out.
Is this a Bill Cosby story?
And I knew you. That's what people. I understand. So she's passed out, and I'm snoring away, and I'm like, not so attractive in a way that you would be. Oh, let's go out with the schnorrer.
Right.
No, snorer.
Snorer.
So, so I go to bed about 5 a.m. At 8 in the morning, I get woken up to sex. And I recommend it highly. It is the best way to wake up.
Yeah.
Unless you're a chick.
It was. Well, I guess if you don't want it, you know, then you should never, ever be involved.
The last thing you knew, she was in the futon.
She's in the futon.
Yeah.
I'm in my bed. I'm in a studio apartment.
Right.
Next thing I know, sexual things are going on, and I'm waking up to it, and I don't say no.
Right.
It was fun. It was really fun.
Okay.
She goes home. She has a boyfriend, I find out. He's up there, and he has no idea that all this happened. So she gets pregnant. She figures it's the other guy. Well, this guy left her, and she met another guy who said, look, I love you, and you're pregnant, and we're going to raise the child ourselves. So she raises the child. Now, her boyfriend at the time was Puerto Rican. When the baby was born, he wasn't Puerto Rican.
Right.
He was blonde hair, blue eyes, like sort of me when I was a baby. And she couldn't figure it out.
Did the baby have resting, smiling face?
Eventually.
Yeah.
He had to grow into it. And so they're raising this kid and the stepfather, and she's a very incredible person who raised him beautifully. But then she had a child with this guy, and they had a family, and she knew I was a comic, and she didn't want to.
What part of still 2
80s.
Hours? Oh no, in New York City.
She lived in upstate still.
Okay.
And he was born in 1987.
Okay.
So he just turned 30.
Oh wow.
So anyways, yeah, of course, but getting better all the time. Beatles. And so all of a sudden, she and one time during the thing, she brought my son over to my apartment. She came with her son and daughter, and I guess she wanted to tell me.
But because you were friends with her, is that why?
She visited my sister a lot in the neighborhood, and she was a huge fan of the Paper Moon Comedy Club. Huge. And huge.
Gina.
And
huge Gina.
And huge Gina. And so she would come to the club, and so we were friendly, I mean, I had sex with her, and it was a lovely experience.
Right.
So it's not like I was like, get out of here. It was like, you're lovely and great, and thanks for an incredible morning.
So when you saw the child, when she brought...
He was 6. I had no idea.
No idea?
No idea. She didn't say anything.
Did he come to you or not?
No, he didn't know. He's 6 years old. So finally
I'm just saying maybe there was an invisible.
There could have been a thing.
Yeah.
When he was 11, he started asking his mother, who's my real father? Because I don't look like this guy, and I know there's a... So she holds an 8x10 of me up, and he probably goes, do you have any other 8x10s I can see? This guy with the sweater? So she says, your friend Eddie Brill, the comedian, is my dad, and I want to meet him. And she told me that I had a son, and I was in denial for a few months. And then I went to see my mom, and I said, Mom, this is crazy, and I haven't told anybody yet, but I think I have a son. Woo!
Oh, that's
another grandchild. And she says, you got to find out. You got to know. So I called her up, Jennifer, and said, hey.
When did she realize it was you? How old was he?
I guess he was like 2 or 3. She found a diary. And it said what she was doing during that time.
I fucked Eddie. Were you in your thin stage? Or
I was so poor that I was the thinnest I've ever been. Not in a good way.
You've had up and down with the weight. Same with me.
2010, I went on this incredible diet, lost 135 pounds, and then the Letterman shit went down, and I started eating.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
The food and the Jews.
Oh,
and
the food and the Jews.
Yeah.
Tuesdays. Catch it. So now he's
So from 11 on, did you see him?
So I didn't see him. I said, I'd like to meet him. She said, well, I saw that you're doing a show in Bryant Park and for HBO, and I was hired by HBO to host all of those things.
I love those.
And we get towels, remember? It was great, and money.
Yeah.
And it was outdoors. So the show was you, Louis Black, Greg Giraldo, and Dave Attell.
That's great.
And I was hosting, and I was so nervous because I wanted my son to think I was funny.
Wait, were you more nervous with the Letterman people or meeting your son?
Meeting my son. Yeah.
Good, right answer.
Yeah, because that's the greatest thing that's ever happened in my life.
Right.
And so I met him, and I
can't believe, I wouldn't, if I knew I was meeting a child I never met, I couldn't do stand-up.
Oh, I've done stand-up under situations like pancreatic cancer.
Right,
So and other things were other stories. But so I was so nervous. So I saw him, and I just fell in love immediately. It wasn't a second. It was less than a second.
Did you hug?
I went up to him, and he was a little uncomfortable, and I was a little nervous, and he was nervous. So I just walked with him for a while, and I started talking to him and said, look, I hope you understand how this all came about, and I'm so happy to meet you.
Your mother was blowing me.
Blowing me, right, and then all of a sudden,
I just want to let you know I was asleep. I woke up, your mother's blowing me.
Right, it's not like she was fucked up and I did a Cosby. I respect women.
Right.
We read the New York Times.
I was snoring. She comes to my bed. She starts playing with my balls.
Right.
And blowing me, so I inserted.
And I said she was authentic with the blowing. And and so, so anyway, and we started becoming close. Then he met my family. I never seen my mom so nervous.
Right.
She was so excited.
Right.
And then he hit it off with everyone, and everyone.
Did he end up going to college or?
No, he ended up wanting to be. He was in show business.
Right.
He was very similar to me. DNA doesn't lie.
Right.
He loves hockey like I do.
Right.
He plays instruments. He
Right.
sings.
Right.
He's Tony Danza.
Right.
No, he's the guy who.
And you're close now.
And we're the best of friends. Last night I got a text from him. I love you. And I melt I melt.
We love that story. Yeah.
So Dan, and he beat.
What's his name?
Dan Madonia, Madonia. And I'm glad that he kept his stepfather's name because they did the Brill.
It rhymes with Ann Madonia.
Dan Brill.
Yeah, that's not good. Madonia is a great.
Have you worked with him?
Yes.
And
well, it's.
Do you
amazing.
have similar senses
similar
of
styles, but he's different.
Humor. Yeah. Gina.
Huge.
Yeah.
And humor.
Huge
and
humor. Gina.
Gina.
Yeah.
Hyman.
Christ.
So the
yeah.
I was Bert Haas of the Zanies Comedy Club said I saw your son at the comedy club in L.A. and he was hilarious. I said, well, let's work. Can I work with him? He said, sure. And we did a week in Chicago. And then every year
they want to book me in that Rosemount room.
That's fantastic.
It is
amazing.
No.
Yes, I love it.
Better than the one in...
They're all great. They really are. I like them all for different reasons, but Rosemont is really built for comedy.
Oh, all right. I'll do it.
You got to do it.
I got to call the agent back. I said, I want to do Chicago, you son of a
course.
bitch.
And it's a classic venue.
Right.
And then every year, the Comedy Store would let us work in La Jolla together, my son and I. And
is that still going?
That's one of the best clubs on the planet.
Let me tell you something. I haven't been there in forever, but I've never slept better than in that condo.
Oh, yeah.
It's right on the ocean. Is it still the blue condo and the green condo?
Different painting, but it's a little nicer.
Right.
Furniture's a little nicer. Because I hadn't stayed at the condo. They put me up at hotels like a spoiled brat. And then this year, my son and I worked there, and they put us at the condo together.
I want to go back. I should call them.
Call them. Call the Comedy Store.
Oh, my God. All right.
Your name's still up there.
Yes.
I worked there all the time.
I know. And
then
you know what's
back.
funny about my name? My name was up there, and they spelled it Eddie Brill, B-R-I-L. And I said, I need another L. So they put B-R-I-L-L-E.
Oh, no.
So then they had to cross off
Eddie
the E.
Brill.
So there's my name is there, and there's all this some guy with a towel wiped off the E.
I performed
and it's still there.
Once too.
Yeah.
I had the belly room every Friday night at 8 o'clock. She fucking gave me that belly room.
That's cool.
And then that's how I had the material for my HBO special. It's called Being Prepared.
La la.
So, Eddie.
Yes.
I could talk to you for 3 more hours.
Yeah, I know, but you have people coming in.
I'm
free.
We have a hard out, and you have a hard cock.
Yeah, Tuesdays.
Tuesdays, hard cock
from
with Eddie
college,
Brill.
we've always did the Tuesdays thing, and Tuesdays at 9, which is weird because that means that is just the most busiest time on television. Tuesdays at 9.
We asked 2 things of all of our guests.
Okay.
The first thing is, what should we do first?
Oh.
Story or...
Yeah, the story.
What pisses you off the most? What makes you fucking get out of your resting smiling face?
Yeah. When people are hypocritical. I'm not a political comic, although I talk about politics, and the hypocrisy just fills me with rage.
Oh.
With rage. And also, that same thing, the thing you're guilty of, but then you get mad at other people.
Right.
You're crossing the street too slow, and the person
you're
in the car is like,
"Come
on, right. And when you're in the car, you're like, that son of a bitch. But I'm not a road rage guy, but but I think the hypocrisy, the lying, the bullshitting, there's no reason
it's
for
going
it.
on. The fact that fucking asshole calls the Democrats obstructionists,
Right.
Their whole agenda was do not let Obama do anything.
They said it live. You could hear it on television.
Yes.
It's not like it's made up.
No.
It's so I have had so much anxiety and rage because of that motherfucker.
Yeah.
I hate him.
Yeah. I've worked at his golf courses. He was on Letterman 1,000,000 times. I met him 1,000 times.
Was he nice to you?
No, he's a piece of shit.
Right. I interviewed him for HBO at the Multiplex.
The thing that I hate the most was the Central Park 5, the way he was so racist and asshole. And Roy Cohn is his mentor.
I know.
And not only is Roy Cohn the most evil man that was his mentor, Trump turned his back on Roy Cohn when Roy Cohn had AIDS at the end.
Right.
And asked for him to help him have an easier death. And Trump said, "Fuck you, AIDS. Go fuck yourself."
Wow.
So a piece of shit. Learn from a piece of shit.
So was
how to
he
be
a piece of shit to Letterman too?
Not really. He loved Letterman.
Right.
Letterman gave him publicity.
Right.
Sure.
But now Letterman is like...
Yeah, well, Letterman called him out on his shit on the show. Remember with the Chinese shirts and the ties and all that kind of stuff? I know women that he molested that he frightened so that they wouldn't report it. I mean, he's a bad guy.
He's a terrible
so he's not
did you hear about Kathy Griffin? She made a Trump joke recently, which was just her holding up a rubber head of Trump, and it had fake blood on it.
What do you mean, have we heard? Well, you're acting like that wasn't one of the biggest things.
Joking.
We didn't talk about it on this show.
Okay, we didn't talk about it on the show. But have you heard is like...
Exactly.
Did you hear that they invaded Normandy? No.
What?
No, it's not the same.
Oh, my God, I have vacation plans.
Okay. I believe in all freedom of speech and freedom of expression, but don't play a victim afterwards.
Right.
No,
don't apologize.
But I believe
don't
that
apologize.
they threatened her life after that, and that's why she apologized. I mean... I'm sure her
But what
life
about
was
the
threatened.
artist who thought of it?
Yeah,
they don't give a shit about him.
Douchman.
No.
And what about all the shit they say about and the laws they pass? It's like, this is fake. This is like, there is a fucking, they are attacking comedians. Like, we are.
However,
because we tell the truth.
Tell the truth.
And no one isn't comfortable with the truth.
Right.
And it's not just Trump and it's not just Clinton. It's been going on. People love Ronald Reagan, but he was a piece of shit.
Ass.
There were many.
It's
presidents.
also women because there are male comics who are very famous who have done the same exact joke, and nothing ever happened to them.
Right.
They weren't forced to apologize.
Yeah, I thought what she did.
I can't believe you were
stupid.
describing the Kathy Griffin.
Well, you guys were looking at me like
because we were like, did she do something else? I thought you were like, she did something else.
New happened.
No. I understand the response.
She cut off the head of a lizard and held it in the air.
And how about how they were like, and Barron was watching? Barron wasn't watching television.
Yeah, what?
You know what? And like, you even give a shit. When's the last time you saw Barron?
Yeah,
Could
yesterday
you
was
pick
the
Barron
first
up
time.
out of a fucking lineup?
No,
Donald.
they visited her. They paid her a visit. I know they did, and threatened her life.
But look, Kathy Griffin has her whole act was about like bullying people,
right.
But it was
exactly,
and this is a joke. I mean, maybe it wasn't funny and it was stupid.
I think it was stupid, but I did laugh.
That.
And he had blood coming from where, whatever.
Right.
Because it's the irony of what he had said.
It was, and then there was another photo of him holding the earth and blood.
Yeah.
There wouldn't be that without that other thing.
They were both funny.
Right.
Yeah.
That's how art works. You wouldn't have that. You know.
But I think it was. I wouldn't have done it.
But it's also like, look, and I was talking to my publicist about this. Like, I have kids, so everything I do is like, how is this going to affect them? She doesn't have kids. She has her career,
Right.
And that's the most important thing in her life is, fame and standing up for GLBTQRSTUVWXYZ and, just being who she is, being a personality. That's what she has. So
that's why I think they threatened her life, because she is always saying, no, I won't apologize. People ask her not to swear at certain shows. They ask her this
Bill
and that.
Maher
and she's famous.
Yeah, Bill Maher apologized. And he had a good show where he had people telling him,
why?
Look, you have no excuse.
And I love that there's no apology from Stephen Colbert because there was nothing wrong with what he said.
No, I do too.
I even actually doubled down on it.
Right.
Because I thought it was so hilarious.
I love him. All right, so
that's the thing that makes me angry is the hypocrisy. It just flames me.
Right.
Life is too short, and there's so much smiling resting face that you could have, despite the bullshit that's in it. So stop lying and stop doubling down on lies.
Now, we're very into mental health here.
Yes.
I've been through a lot of anxiety, depression, I have a lot of, So we ask every guest this. Are you on or have you ever been on any antidepressants?
Never took pills for it, but did a lot of therapy for it.
Right.
Because I've always been against putting pills in my body because of my family.
Right. Oh, because the drug addictions.
The addictions and all that kind of stuff. I don't believe that,
But you don't judge other people.
No. And as a matter of fact, I understand everyone has a different need.
Right.
And someone would need a massage, and someone would need a pill, and someone would need a talking to, and some people would need tough love.
Some people really need pills.
Yes.
Because their chemistry.
Because the chemistry of your body.
Exactly. So what kind of, have you been to CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy?
Oh, yeah, it's the
Isn't
best.
that the best?
EMDR.
Yes, and I've done that,
Yeah, craniosacral therapy, integrative manual therapy. But that also works with the meridians in your body and helps change the chemistry in your body. And it really can, it can, for a lot of people, get people off of pills.
Yeah, I want to do that.
Pills are a good transition for a lot of people, too.
Yeah.
And speaking of transitioning.
Yeah.
Everything's a transition.
I want to do the EMDR. I know, because I'm trying to.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. Do you have a good one in New York?
In Florida. I went down to Florida because I had this Letterman thing in my head all the time.
Right.
I have
it's like obsessed. I know.
Right.
It's
there's
shame,
all these,
shame. You're an asshole.
Right. And I was so nice.
Right.
And it was just like I was helping someone cross the street and got arrested for wrinkling their shirt.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's what it felt like was going on. I was being so good and so nice and trying to let comedians know that authenticity is what we look for at Letterman in males and females. But anyway, so I would go for EMDR to get rid of the bullshit that was attached to it, that victim bullshit that I had let myself.
And also the punishing yourself.
Yeah,
the constantly
I put on all this weight because of it.
Look at me.
And then
you were a victim of that, though, and it's good that you're moving forward from it. But I mean,
okay,
I
you're
think you were.
30.
But if I didn't put
30 years old.
But if I didn't go and do the New York Times interview if I would have told somebody, at least that would have, so I have to take the blame for that.
I think
that's
you
what
have.
I did. Yeah, I have.
You have, like, by
and
far.
you've also reached out to explain yourself, which a lot of people don't do.
Yeah. And if no one is listening to you if they are still
and you're a
mad
great
at you
person.
For that. They don't want to believe.
Right.
And they're
I understand that. They're
not listening.
There are comics out there that think I've ruined their lives or whatever. And in reality, I learned from my favorite book, The Four Agreements.
Right.
There's one of them is don't take things personally because it's people projecting their fears onto you. And a lot of times comedians will project the fact that, that's what I believe. Again, I'm sorry, Elaine, that I'm talking about you out loud. I never planned on it, but I think she was projecting her fear. She hates me, and she jumped on it, even though she was one of the comics that did do the show.
Right.
Well, then she's not responsible for her own failure, and isn't that nice?
Yeah.
Right. So people.
Okay,
but
Hennessy, we're having Elaine on the show.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I will tell
and
you
I love Elaine.
Yeah.
So
and the funny thing is that I think she's hilarious. I always did.
She is so funny. Yeah.
We worked on a set. It was brilliant.
Right. I'm just saying in general, I think the people that use others to blame for wherever they feel they're at in their own lives in
I wish
some
we had
negative
music
way
right now.
Yeah.
Is just to start turning it up. Okay, great.
We
Thanks,
we need to get Hennessy music. Like every time Hennessy has some philosophical thing that we can play some dreaded
I
music.
do regret bringing up I do regret bringing up somebody's name and that kind of a thing. It's just that we're talking and going off on it.
Yeah, and I wasn't speaking specifically about her. I just mean anybody.
Right. So there are people who said, hey,
Oh my God, I just got an alert on CNN. Ready?
Happened? Yeah.
This is the best.
Elaine Boozler.
1/3 of the world is now, this is from CNN. 1/3 of the world is now overweight or obese. An increasing number of people are dying from health problems linked to extra pounds.
Wow. It would be really perfect. It would be really perfect if
we
the
just
floor gave way right now.
Yeah.
Well, it's gone up from 1/3 to 1/5. No,
Wow.
No, that's less.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right. I used to be good at math, and then I became a comedian.
Yeah.
Well, Eddie.
But I always loved you, and I
love you.
And I've appreciated your comedy and your honesty and your friendship, and I've been dying to do your show because I knew this would come up, the chat about that. And, I know that a lot of people listen, and whether they want to believe me or not, it's okay. It really doesn't matter anymore. But the good thing is we got
right, and I love you.
Yes.
So here's the things you promised on the show. I'm going to go to Nebraska.
Okay, Nebraska.
And I want to do the Woodstock one.
Yes. Well, we asked you for this.
I know, but I can't do it.
You can't do it.
And I don't want to go on and I want to be like the big
star.
name. Yeah.
Right. Well, that's what we called you for.
No, they told me it was to open for Caroline.
It wasn't opening for Caroline. It was only big stars on a show. That's what we were going to do. And it was going to be you, Caroline, and one other person who I won't mention because they couldn't do it. Then we changed the format of the show to do that. No, but
can I do it next year?
Of course, we want to do it. Me and Pat Buckles are the people.
I know.
And she and I would talk about you all the time. And we said, "Can we get Judy?" And
I have another. That's a bad time of year for me with the kids and the Rosh Hashanah.
Well, now you've got a full year to
bring the kids up because they put you up in this beautiful.
Eddie, do you think I want my fucking kids annoying me up there?
Yeah,
Henry
sometimes.
will be like, "Whoa, is there a dispensary around here?"
Probably.
Eddie, thank you. Will you come back?
I would.
Will you come back?
Yes,
come back?
Of course I'll come back.
Right.
We haven't even talked about anything, and we talked about the past.
I know. We need to talk about what's going on now.
Right. I have good things going going on.
Yeah,
really great things. A lot of people have approached me about creating content for the not the internet, but for major networks, and also producing comedy specials. And
that's what I have not done. That's where I feel the ageism.
Right.
I haven't done. I did a special on HBO. I did a special on Comedy Central. I did a special on Logo. I haven't done a special in 10 years, and I have so much material.
Right.
And we have been. It's like I have never. I'm like a great comic. Like
I know.
I'm out there every. I mean, like it's my fucking blood and life.
And audiences just flock to you. I mean, I picture your special like a George Carlin special in the round where you're just talking to everybody.
Right?
Can't you produce it yourself?
I don't have the money.
But
I have
that's
kids.
the thing. So now I've gotten a situation where nothing's signed, and hopefully it'll happen.
Right.
They gave me a couple of specials to show what I could do, and there's some young people, some older people. It's a combination.
Right.
Because recently it came out in the news that Ellen DeGeneres was going to do a TV special, which is great, and then all of a sudden people are like, "Oh, next they're going to get." Eddie Murphy, like they were making fun of. They're getting old people,
right?
And it's like
you have to see my episode of I'm Dying Up Here. It's on It's on. Oh, it'll be on already. It was on.
You were on the previews. I saw that.
Yeah. So this is going to air next week, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's on. It would have just been on 2 days ago.
Right. Kathy Ladman. I have that on tape, and Rick
or
Overton.
Maybe a week and 2 days ago, because this will probably be a second half.
Oh, right. So
go check it
my
out.
episode, you're gonna fucking die.
I'm excited.
Yeah. So, keep me in mind for those specials.
Okay, what were the other things I promised? The festivals for sure.
Nebraska and Woodstock.
Yeah, you'll love them.
And can we talk about specials and like?
Yes, we can. I'm making a list of. I've already got 6 ideas. They're probably going to let me do 2. And at the beginning, but just to see, and if it goes well, because I have an idea for a show that's not a stand-up special, but a comedy special, and I have 2 different ideas for that, and they're in the where they go. If this works out for us, we'll give you all of that stuff.
Yeah, bitches.
I know, baby. So, I waited long enough.
I know.
And now I'm able to
help
comics again.
Motherfuckers.
Eddie Brill for the win. Fuck all
Eddie,
y'all.
where can people find you on the intranet?
Eddie_Brill, because somebody stole Eddie Brill.
I hate that. EDDIE_BRILL. No E.
Yeah, no E. And then there's the, it's Instagrams and all that.
Do you do the tweetar?
I do now. I started when it very first started, and it scared me. I was like, ah! And then I stopped, but I just started again.
Yeah.
Like around 6
Remember
months ago.
when we just had to write all day and get on stage?
Yes.
And now we have to fucking...
Eddie Brill.
I'm up all night. I was up till 3 or 4 writing.
I know. I texted you.
Yes, I got the call at 2, and they're the only people that are up. Caroline Ray texted me at 3:30 the other day, and she goes, "Oh, we're up. We're awake."
Oh, yeah. Patty Rossborough texted me at 1:30 in the morning. What are those sleeping pills I should get? I swear to God. I know. It's like we're all up.
We're all ambling.
Eddie, I love you. I adore
you so much. Always have, always will. I wanted to do this show. I've heard it before. I've heard some of my favorite friends on it.
Oh, thank you.
I wanted to be one of those favorite friends.
Well, you are.
Yay.
And you'll come back. And, wow. Do we have anything else to say? Here's our last... So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. And as we always say, so long!
And everything was wonderful. I'll see you soon. Thank you for the visit. So long.